And a new CNN poll shows that Americans are rapidly losing confidence in the president's handling of this economy right now. Just 18% of those who were surveyed say they have a lot of confidence in Biden's ability to deal with the economy. Half of respondents saying they have no confidence. And in a new interview, President Biden is speaking to this mood and also acknowledging the pain Americans are feeling from inflation, which, as we know, just hit a 40-year high. Listen.
I think it was back in July, you said inflation was going to be temporary. I think a lot of Americans are wondering what your definition of temporary is.
Well, you're being a wise guy with me a little bit, and I understand that's your job.
When can Americans expect some relief from this soaring inflation?
According to Nobel laureates, 14 of them that contacted me and a number of corporate leaders, it's ought to be able to start to taper off as we go through this year. In the meantime, I'm going to do everything in my power to deal with the big points that are impacting most people in their homes.
Joining me right now, CNN White House correspondent John Harwood and CNN chief political analyst Gloria Borger. You know, John, I asked something very similar of what Lester Holt asked to Biden. I asked something very similar of one of Biden's top economic advisors, Jared Bernstein, just yesterday, and Jared had no problem answering the question. But the president's response, I don't get it. Do you?
I actually do, Kate. Look, first of all, Lester Holt is not a wise guy, terrific journalist, nothing wrong with the question. Certainly, President Biden's political advisors do not like it when he expresses annoyance in public, stipulate all that. But the reason that he was annoyed is that there's a lot wrong with the inflation conversation that we're having right now. First of all, a lot of the inflation that we're dealing with is, in fact, transitory. The question is, how long does the pandemic last? That's what transitory means. It's about disruptions related to the shutdown of the economy and the restart of the economy after the pandemic. Second of all, a lot of the discussion of inflation concerns or includes the assumption that it's President Biden's problem to solve. It is likely true that the American Rescue Plan he passed last year was too big and contributed to this inflation. We don't know exactly how much. But in terms of the problem right now, this is principally a problem for the Federal Reserve to solve, not for the president. And then the final reason is that a lot of the inflation discussion obscures the fact that there are very many good things about this economy. Unemployment at 4%. Everybody who wants a job can get a job. People at the bottom of the income spectrum are seeing their wages rise faster than inflation. That reduces income inequality. That's because there's tremendous demand for labor. People at the top are seeing asset prices like home prices rise. So there are a lot of Americans doing very well in the economy. That sometimes gets obscured in the discussion that we're having about inflation.
But again, we've been talking about the trends are confusing. I mean, the economic data coming in is in contrast to each other, and that's part of the discussion. I think that's what Lester was trying to get at with the president. But Gloria, as John perfectly lays out, you cannot talk about the economy without talking about the pandemic. His approval has dipped there. I think we're down 9 points since December, and fewer people are saying they have a lot of confidence that he can lead the country out of the pandemic. What does that say to you?
Well, look, his handling of the pandemic was his calling card. And it was very important to getting him elected because he promised that he would bring the country back to a sense of normalcy. And what you see in those numbers is people saying, we haven't done that. You haven't done that. Now, what this White House confronted was the headwinds, of course, that were unexpected, that came with the Delta variant over the summer and then with Omicron more recently. And, you know, when you take that as a whole, the public expected a certain amount of competence from Joe Biden, and whether right or wrong, they say, you haven't fixed the problem that you came here to fix. And when you talk to people in the White House, they will tell you, number one, they couldn't have predicted Delta. And number two, they did not predict how many people would be anti-vax. But the president, you look at him, you say, you promised, you didn't do it, you didn't fix it. And so it really is, it dampens Democratic enthusiasm in going out for the polls in the fall. And we also see that in our poll that Republicans are much more enthusiastic about going out and voting than Democrats, I think by about 8 points. So, all put together, it's not a really good picture for Joe Biden right now.
And there's a number I mentioned at the top. There are a few people, John, 18%, saying that they have a lot of confidence in Biden's ability to deal with the economy. But I have to say, and I know we often talk about this, there's still a lot of time left between now and the midterms. I mean, time for a lot of things to change. External events to quickly shift the country's focus and the country's priorities. Are Republicans wrong then to read good news in the numbers that we see in this survey?
No, I don't think they're wrong at all. I think there's very good news for Republicans in this survey. It's a very bad, as Gloria just laid out, it's a very bad political environment for Democrats. And as we look ahead now, it seems very likely that Republicans are going to hammer Democrats in this fall's election, retake certainly the House of Representatives, perhaps even the Senate. Is it possible things could change? Yes. If you see, in fact, we make a transition from the emergency phase of the pandemic to the endemic phase, if President Biden is feels comfortable coming out in the State of the Union address and saying, take the masks off, let's get back to normal, that might have an effect on the public mood. If inflation moderates during the course of the year, which is what most economists expect to happen, that may have an effect on the public mood. But he's been well under 50% for quite a long time. Opinion changes slowly. So I would think that Republicans, the odds are that the Republicans are going to be quite right in their current level of optimism.
It's great to see you guys. Thanks for being here.